Okay, the first thing we're going to do is we are going to correct this exposure because it's a little underexposed right now. We want the image to be brighter. There's a few ways to do this. In Photoshop and most Adobe applications, you can do the same thing using 3 different tools. I'm going to show you 2 ways to do this. One thing though, we always want to use non-destructive editing, meaning we don't want to make permanent adjustments to the image because we want to be able to go back and forth if we need to and adjust it in the future. So never do this. Don't ever go to Image, Adjustments. These are all no-no adjusters. These are all permanent adjustments. You can't go backwards, especially if you run out of history states. So just, pretend these don't exist. What you want to do is you want to utilize the layers palette over here. And we want to use adjustment layers. Where are my adjustment layers at? Sure. All right. Okay, so you have an adjustment panel. It looks like a black and white cookie. Any Seinfeld fans out there? No one? All right. It's the black and white cookie. If you don't have the black and white cookie up for your adjustment panel, you can go to Window and just select Adjustments, and that panel will pop open. We're going to start with this top row here. The top row relates to luminosity, meaning the brightness of an image. And we're going to use levels. Levels isn't my favorite adjustment layer, but it gets the job done. It's more simplified than curves, which is my favorite. So here we have these 3 sliders instead of levels. If we look at the value scale at the bottom, we can see that we have a black point and we have a white point. All in the middle is gray. So these sliders here relate to this value scale. If I want to increase the black point, so give the shadow more depth, I'll grab the black slider and I will slide it towards the center, and that starts to give that more depth. If I want to increase my white point, I start sliding the white point slider towards the center. If I want to adjust the midpoint range, which is all the gray in the middle, then I grab the middle slider and I can lift that up. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and adjust my highlight first. I'm going to bring that towards the edge of my histogram right here. And then now I'm going to get my midpoint. I'm going to lift that up. And then now what I'm going to do is I'm going to give it a little bit more depth by bringing in my black point towards the center. And what that does is it gives the image contrast. Every image needs a contrast adjustment because it helps to sharpen up all the edges, it helps to create separation, and it brings out more detail. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to open up my layers panel, and we can see that I have my adjustment layer right here. What I like to do is I like to stay organized with my Photoshop layers. So I'll double click the name and I'll call this exposure adjustment. So this is what I mean by non-destructive editing. What I can do now is I can turn that layer on and off. So that if I wanted to, so say later on down the road, if the image it needs to be brighter, I can reopen this image, go back into that very same layer, open it up, and I can readjust it as necessary. Inside of the panel, you're going to have these different previewing options. So here we have preview. Over here you have a reset all settings. So if I hit this, it'll reset all of my adjustments. Here you can look at the setting before, and this will turn it into a clipping mask, which we're not dealing with right now. And if you want to throw the layer away, you can just hit the trash can button and it'll disappear. So that's a basic exposure adjustment. Whenever you do the exposure adjustment, if you're brightening it, you always want to adjust the contrast. You never just want to brighten it, because when you brighten it, it is going to impact the midpoint value and your shadow value. So all those things need to be fine-tuned just a little bit.